So yes, we are live now.
Okay.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Konark Bhatia, and I welcome you again to the Creative Conclave, India's first and biggest conclave for design and architecture entrance exam preparing students. With me right now is Rocío. Rocío is from Spain, and for the benefit of everyone, let me read out her introduction. She is an interesting personality, and she specializes in interaction design. So Rocío is an interaction designer and design educator from Spain. She has worked as a faculty of human-centered design and visual communication at Srishti Institute of Art, Design and Technology in Bangalore, India. For the past 4 years, where she led the BDES program in HCD, she has background of fine arts and virtual archaeology. She completed her master's degree in interactive digital media from Trinity College, Dublin. Her work experience includes a decade of web development and interactive digital design. She did her internship as an exhibitions design at the Guggenheim Museum in Bilbao. Rocío is interested in exploring interaction design at the crossroads of human activities and the natural world, more specifically in looking at how digital technologies mediate our relationship with the environment and how this mediation can play an important role in building a more conscientious and harmonious world. She loves to teach design thinking approaches to young minds that can help us build a bright future. Rocío, we are so honored to have you here. Welcome to the broadcast that we are having right now.
Thank you, Konark. Thank you for inviting me and thank you for introducing me so kindly. I'm glad to be here.
Rocío, the first question that comes to my mind, I'll tell you what I am. I am a counselor. So my role in Creative Edge is a counselor role, apart from the other roles that I play here. So as a counselor, I often hear students asking me that they're confused about what fields they should choose. And one of them is interaction design, obviously. I suggest them, yes, one of the fields is interaction design. But interaction design can be an answer which is very simple answer to it. How do you define it? But we would like to hear your perspective on it.
Okay.
What's interaction design?
All right, sure. So interaction design is it's an evolution. I mean, it's a definition in progress. I would say it's in constant evolution because of the nature of what it represents. So it started as a field that was studying how people interact with machines, right? Digital technology. But because one can say that we are still in the early days of digital technology, there is a constant evolution and a constant change, not only in the understanding of digital technology, but also in our understanding of ourselves with regards to digital technology, what we can achieve, and how it impacts the world at large, what we do with it. So at the current moment, I would say that the best perhaps definition or the most complete definition that I would give for interaction design is that it's a field that studies how humans interact with technology in product, service, and system design. However, because it is an expanding field, it's also very interested in defining how people interact not only with machines, but with each other and with the environment. Okay. So, yes.
So if I understand it clearly, then it is almost everywhere because humans are the ones who are using the machines. Yes. So so interaction design is probably everywhere, whether it is a product or a service or anything that we think of.
Yes, exactly. So any place where you can see a machine, there is an aspect to it, which is the design of the interaction. So because machines aren't people, right, as we all know, but not only aren't they people, they're not living things, but they imitate living organisms in a way. So we need to program them in ways that we can understand them. So what we do is we translate the way we know the world. So what is known as cognitive psychology and behavioral psychology, we translate those principles into the design of interfaces so that we can expand on and have good experiences when we are operating machines. However, you may also encounter that some fields of interaction design are not specifically referring to machine interaction only, but also about how we interact with, for example, a setting, yes, in an architectural building. Because design is a field that is starting to become independent, as in traditionally it has been part of other disciplines of education. So architecture, of course, is design in itself, but you would have a design part in medicine or a design part in engineering. And now there's been an effort worldwide to make design an independent discipline, right? But pretty much embracing many different possible applications. Yeah. So yes. I'm just expanding on the original definition that I gave you, right? So it's not only, so there'll be people now in interaction design, perhaps studying the flux in architectural spaces and not necessarily anything about digital technology, but possibly about digital technology as well.
All right. So good to hear a good definition on your perspective on interaction design. My questions are generally inspired by the questions that are being asked to me during the counseling sessions. So, as a student, generally, children are very worried about the career and job opportunities in in any sort of field that they choose. So, if I ask you, what are the jobs and career opportunities in interaction design? What kind of job or careers they choose? They land up into after doing interaction design, a formal education in interaction design.
Yes. Well, the buzzword at the moment is UX, UI design, right? Which means user experience, user interface design, which are two subfields of interaction design. And just, I think it was last week at some point, I ran into a piece of news that said that this is the highest demanded, single highest demanded job in the job market in India at the moment. So it is everywhere because everyone is making an effort to move into upgrading themselves through digital technology, and so everybody needs designers to do that. So UX, UI, I would say, is the most prominent field at the moment where an interaction designer can go, but that's a field that will also typically bring people from other disciplines as well, like behavioral sciences or visual communication. And in interaction design specifically, you could go into other things as well, like human-computer interaction research fields, for example, and do types of work that are research-heavy and that will push the world of digital technology forward, that type of work that they do, for example, at the MIT Media Lab. And you might also work on a research capacity, but in the industry, not in research institutions. So you might be, for example, doing user experience research alone rather than development or design. And then there are different types of technologies that you can specialize in as well, like you can work in extended reality, anything about virtual reality and augmented reality, mixed reality. If you also learn coding, you can go into things such as robotics or human-centered computing, which would be about systems design. and do some more heavily technical work that requires both a very strong technical knowledge as well as design knowledge. And there are an endless number of big known companies, ever more, that are employing mostly people that work in interaction, designing interactions, like all the tech giants, such as Google, Facebook, and many others that work with mobile technologies, for example, like Siemens or Nokia. Or then there are many companies now that are starting to specialize in design alone, and so you have several of those in India, right? Like GoPro or a number of others. So it's a vast field. There are many jobs in the market. And yes, I would say that mostly those are the applications. Also, you could, if you were interested, you could also specialize, for example, in game design, and then you might be designing video games, or work in motion capture, how to translate physical movement from people into digital movement for character animation. Yes.
So you in fact answered my next question as well. So what are the kind of companies that, I mean, any big names that that hires interaction designers? So you mentioned Google, Facebook, or Siemens, companies, big companies who are dealing with mobile gaming and stuff like that. So mobile applications.
Yes, but but aside from that, you would have many other companies. So you don't have to go into the larger names alone. You can also be doing some work for government agencies. Typically, for example, one job I had a few years back was for an agency of the United States government, rebuilding a website. I know that the European Union hires people that have interaction design skills to design the types of services that they provide to people. There are many adjacent fields in interaction design that are of great public interest, as to, for example, how we can use the power of digital technology to help us with environmental concerns or with the UN developmental goals, and how do you apply, for example, machine intelligence, computational intelligence into designs that people can use to make things, the automation of certain tasks, administrative, and of other types of services. How do you make them more efficient, more accessible to the larger population? And then there are an endless number of small businesses and startups that are constantly trying to update themselves. They are small businesses, right? Needing to maybe launch a new product or expand their market. And they might need to hire somebody that has a bit of a background in user experience design to do some market research and then apply those insights into how to modify their products so that, again, they can reach the benchmarks that they have set for themselves. And it's a very, I would say, it's probably one of the most assured areas to get a job at the moment, really. And so generally, I will report this career as well. So the economic prospects are good.
That's great. So what I could comprehend for the viewers is this is one of the most demanded field of design right now, and then you get a lot of jobs around interaction design. There are a lot of things to do around interaction design.
Yes, and it's not going to get any less. It's going to probably keep on growing and expanding.
So, Rosho, one more thing, like different colleges, different institutions have different names for interaction design. So, are there any alternative names for interaction design when you
Yes.
do?
Yeah, of course, there are many alternative names, and it depends heavily on where you are, but also in the type of specialization and also in the type of approach that both a company or an institution, a teaching institution has on the subject. So, for example, when I did my master's, it was in interactive digital media. But I would say that much of what I do teach now came from me having learned those disciplines. So it was around media. So some universities will still focus on the media side of interaction design. Then you will have other universities that will offer courses in human-computer interaction, which is kind of the more original way of calling this, but that'll give you a hint that it's probably a more research-oriented approach, or it's a more systems-oriented approach. Then in the markets, in the world of jobs, you will encounter that different companies give different names to interaction design roles. So for example, in Google, you might find that they call an interaction designer an interaction engineer. And in other company, they might have roles for experienced engineers. But the problem also goes the other way around. Where you will find that the UX UI designer, which is the most common way of referring to this at the moment, is often, even though they give it the same name, the description of the job will vary as well depending on the company that you're working for. So depending on how large a company is, they might be hiring somebody to do UX, UI, and that then they will have to cover the whole scope of doing research and translating that into a design, and then user testing it and developing it to the end result. But other larger companies might have smaller, might be splitting the same one job into smaller roles so that people can be more dedicated to, for example, research activities or interface design activities, or something specific about interface, which is the interactions or the flows of the users, how they move from one screen, for example, to the next.
That's great. That's great. Another question that comes to my mind is like, if a student wish to choose interaction design, how he or she should start preparing for the same?
Right. So yes, this is a great question, because these students, all of them, the people that are going to start college next year and in the coming years, they'll all be digital natives. Whereas I am not. So when I was born, digital technology had already been invented, but it was very, very early days. And I remember I got my first email account, and I was an early adopter when I started college, the year I started college, right? And so back then, internet was still slow, and there were many. We wouldn't be using Google all the time, and definitely we did not have smartphones. Right. So, but nowadays, most kids have smartphones, they have access to the internet, and they're very habituated to using digital products. So, one of the main things that an aspiring interaction designer can do is to start studying what digital products are, what digital products they're using, how are those built, what are the common patterns that they see, that's something, an experience is similar no matter what product I am using, and what kinds of problems arise, when do I have a good experience, when do I have a bad experience, what are the different elements that are conform this interface, and could they be any different? So just having a little bit of a methodical approach into understanding the digital technology that they handle. That is one of the best things that they can do, I should say. And otherwise, of course, taking any supporting classes and general notions, understanding of design is the other best thing that they can do. Read about design and try practicing.
Try and practice. All right. Probably a last question to you. We've often heard that a field interaction design needs to have a lot of technical know-how and coding. Is this true, or can a student from a humanities or a commerce background can take up interaction design?
The answer is yes. People from the humanities or social sciences can take up interaction design. No, there isn't. It's not a must and absolute requirement to know hardcore science and technical know-how about programming and or hardware development. And because it's such a large field and we need people coming from different backgrounds. Typically, when I did my own master's in my class, my master's was coding based. So we had to learn several programming languages, but I came from a fine arts background, no notion of coding before the master's. Some people had their background in computer science, but then there were people from theater or from media or from, I don't know, social science, very different disciplines. And I have friends, I know people that do come from a social science background, that they would have, and then they're working with technology. And I know even people from that have a medical degree and work with technology. We're talking about more advanced knowledge. But anyhow, if you would have had a computer science kind of background, if you would have taken a more technical secondary school training, then you would have, stronger perhaps leaning towards that side of interaction design, which is about understanding how to design systems, perhaps, yes. And it can give you an advantage to know certain things, especially about front-end coding if you're going into user experience and user interface design, for example, but it's not necessarily so. And you could be very interested in research, for example, and for that case, maybe knowing anthropology is much more useful than computer science. So the answer is both yes and no, because if you have that background, you'll have strength there. If you have another background, you'll also have strength elsewhere. And it's by nature, it's an interdisciplinary field.
That's great. That's great. So yes, now I'm done with my questions. Students, I hope, have learned good insights from Rocío. And Rocío, thank you so much for being here. We are so glad to have you here. And we learned few things which are which were completely unknown about interaction design, impact of social economic culture into it, and impact of technology into it, how things are being looked upon worldwide right now. You gave us a very good perspective about it. Thank you
Yeah.
so much for coming and sparing your time on a Sunday. Have a good evening and and enlighten us whenever you can.
Thank you, Konark. It's been a pleasure being here. It's always a pleasure for me to talk about my discipline, which I really very much love. And I'm also really thrilled to know that there are people interested. So it's my pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Yeah, so we just ended the stream.